Good morning, everybody, to another beautiful Saturday. Welcome to week 3 of Coast to Coast College Football Pregame Show. I'm your host, Uncle Shally. My top left, as always, helping me steer the ship, my Buckeye brother from another mother, Mr. Cottrell Simpson. How are you, sir?
Feeling good, man. We are just 2 weeks away from, week 1. We're 1 week away from week 0. I'm feeling good. It's in the air, and I'm ready to rock and roll today.
I agree. We are less than 2 weeks away from everything just being football, pretty much every day, all week until January, and I love it. Got a little glimpse of fall here the last couple of days. It's going to get back out again, but like Cottrell said, you can just feel it in the air. The smells are starting to change. You're starting to get a little leaf coloration. It's hitting season. It's getting very close to football. And top right corner, my man from the Pacific Northwest, where probably the leaves have already started to change. Mr. Oregon Duck, Mr. Alex Elmore, how are you, sir?
Man, I feel great, but I gotta tell you guys, y'all talk about fall. It is still the middle of August. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, I get football's on the way, but it's still hot. It was 100 degrees this week.
I didn't say anything about fall. I didn't say anything about fall. I just said you can smell it in the air. I smell it in the air. It's football. It smells like pigskin.
See, now I just want bacon, man. This morning show, I didn't eat breakfast. Now I just want bacon. I do not appreciate that. Bill, please, we gotta start the show because I'm getting distracted.
Very close-minded, Alex.
I know.
Anyway, listen though, we do have to get right into it. So, big week news-wise in college football. The topic that I think a lot of people have been waiting to end one way or the other, no matter what side you're on. The Michigan sanctions came out yesterday afternoon. If you're not a Michigan fan and you're expecting the hammer and all these other things that I've been hearing for a year and a half, you probably had a bad day yesterday. We're going to get into that right off the top of this show here. We also have a couple other things to get into, and another topic that, depending on how it goes, could end up becoming a bigger issue than I think some people think it is right now. But that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Alex as always, and then we're going to start with breaking the huddle right away.
Shotgun, DC right, flip 90, dig, on the center, ready?
All right. So break the huddle. We are going to start right away, just like Bill alluded to. Was the hammer dropped on Michigan? Obviously, a lot of fans expecting a much harsher punishments than what was actually laid down. We do actually have here what the punishments were. Very detailed. Obviously, there's a lot of information that came out. But we got 4 years of probation, a $50,000 fine plus 10% of the budget for the football program, a fine equivalent. I'm not going to read all the fines. It basically adds up to about between $20 and $25 million when it's all said and done. They're also going to get a 25% reduction in football official visits during the 25-26 season and a 14-week prohibition on recruiting communications in the football program during that probation period. Now, Jim Harbaugh has to do a 10-year show clause order restricting him from all athletically related activities during the show cause period, which will begin on August 7th, 2028 at the conclusion of his 4-year show cause order from a previous case. Sharon Moore gets a 2-year show cause order. He gets, what was it, Bill? One more game added onto his suspension that he's going to be serving next year. And
Correct.
then
From this week 1 next year.
Yeah, which
maybe
whatever.
Some game next year.
Some game next year. And then Connor Stallions gets an 8-year show cause order, restricting him from all athletically related activities during the show cause period. And then randomly, Denard Robinson, 3-year show cause order, restricting him from all athletically related activity during the show cause period. There's a lot of information coming out, a lot of things to read through and kind of dive into. Ultimately, the biggest thing is the $20 to $25 million fine. That's all said and done. What's your guys' reaction initially? Cottrell, I know you feel one way about it. Bill, you feel another. Who wants to start us off?
I mean, it's Bill's team, so I will defer to him. If he wants me to go first, I can. If he wants to get, what he's got, on his heart, off his chest, then I'm good with that too. I'm whatever way we want to go here.
Well, I mean, again, this is going to be a good discussion, so I'll start it, and I'll say this from the get go. I wasn't 100% right, but I was pretty close. The stuff that came out with the infraction so far, hardball stuff is all about being a repeat offender after obviously the Cheeseburger Gate situation, and then pretty much just not cooperating with this investigation from the get go. 8 years for me, I think or 10 years, I think is whatever. It's ridiculous, but at the same time, it's a whatever punishment, because I think everybody on the show and everybody that watches this show knows he's not going back to college, so it doesn't really matter. So the hardball thing to me is a lot about nothing. I think they got to have their fun with, punishing him. And again, I've been steadfast on this from the get-go with him. This all started when he publicly said, that's probably 4 or 5 years ago at this point now, that the NCAA should be paying athletes. That's when this all started with him and this little stupid feud that he had with the NCAA. But again, that's not really the crux of this for me. Because again, I don't think he has any desire to ever coach in college again. He did what he wanted to do. He's not going back. So that's whatever. The fine, I think, is interesting because it's technically really a lien kind of against the program of what they could possibly earn the next 2 years. It's interesting how it's going to play out because we haven't got to the Big Ten yet, but I don't think Michigan is much more. I mean, I think there's a chance they make the playoff this year, but they're a fringe team. I don't think they're going to be a guaranteed, team that gets in. I think next year they probably are. So I think next year they end up paying a huge chunk of that fine, but I don't know how that plays out this year. The Sherrone Moore thing I find interesting. I think Michigan played their hand pretty early with that, with getting him the self-imposed 2-game suspension for this year to kind of satisfy the NCAA. I guess they wanted one more game, which means he'll sit out. I think they actually designated the first game of next year. I don't know if I have to go back and reread that, but whoever it is, it's going to be Central or Western Michigan or whoever they're playing in Germany next year. So I don't think it's going to matter. So again, that's kind of whatever. This for me has always kind of been about what Connor really did, what he didn't do, who knew, who didn't know. His testimony was apparently very interesting on both sides from what I've read. He kind of, I think, apparently a couple times they let him talk, and I think he talked a little bit longer than he should have and kind of gave some certain things away to the NCAA that I don't think they knew. But then there was also a couple times from what I've read that he directly blew up things that the NCAA thought they knew and they thought he was there. So when it was all said and done, they could only prove that he went in person one time, notwithstanding the Central Michigan thing, which is going to be handled separately because he was technically getting paid by Central Michigan that night. So, that kind of explains why if you watch the documentary, he couldn't really answer that. That kind of explains it now. He was on the sideline. Obviously, it was him. I think we all knew it was him from the get-go. But he was there under Central Michigan. Knew he was there. They paid him to be there. They were kind of doing the same thing. So I think some of it is very telling. I think some of it, again, they cleared Jim Harbaugh of not knowing what was going on, but then still charged him with lack of institutional control, which is one of those things I've hated forever. I don't think if you're the head coach of a program, you have the ability to monitor or control or be in the know of what every football player on your team is doing every minute of the night. I know go back to Cotrell know this, going back to the Jim Tressel thing. I think it's impossible for Jim Tressel to know that Terrell Pryor was at a tattoo shop giving a guy a pair of pants in exchange for a free tattoo.
No, he 100% knew for what it's worth, but that's why he got fired, because he wasn't throwing his players under the bus. But
even if he didn't know, my point is situations like that, I think that's impossible. That's an impossible load that you put on to coaches. And I get it if there's certain things, to Charles' point, if you do know, Tressel fell on the sword, and I get all that. And, that's why I think a lot of people, in the Columbus area anyway, still love him because he didn't throw his players under the bus. But, we joke about it all the time, like Hence, Georgia. Like, how is Kirby Smart not been charged with anything? So, again, this is because it's, goes back to, for me, the inconsistencies a lot about what the NCAA chooses to do, not to do, what they choose a blind eye to, so forth and so on. So the Connor thing, though, I think we could finally lay to rest in that, he was part of this, underground, whatever you want to call it. He was doing it. There's no doubt about it. They mentioned again the report that Harbaugh did not know. There was a bunch of rumors out there that those texts between him and Sherrone Moore were talking about stuff like that. That's been debunked. Sherrone Moore got suspended for deleting them, and not, they were normal texts, but they were retrieved and they had nothing to do with sign stealing. It's really crazy to me that this one guy, A, got this good at it, but B, created all like this whole mess. Like, it is like such a lone wolf situation, and such like a weird desire to, get the attaboy from, Harbaugh and other guys on the staff, and wanting to be, a part of the team so much, to go through all of this over and over and over. But he broke the rules, and it's, I don't think it's a gray area like some people think. I will admit that it's a black and white rule, and he broke it and he got caught. And here we are. I think, again, I never thought we were going to get to the point of vacated wins and all of that stuff, because mainly of how the season ended, and also because of their leniency kind of in the last couple of years with what they've done and their punishments. You look at a couple of years ago, Tennessee had 18 level 1 violations. They got fined like $8 million and a couple other things in probation. That's it. You look at the Kansas basketball situation from a couple of years ago, where they got caught paying players to go to Kansas before you were really allowed to do that. That was a bunch of level 1 violations. There was no vacated wins or anything there. That was the only reason I thought we were going to get away from that. And I only thought that if it was true that Harbaugh and all those people were not involved in it. If they were involved in it, then I think this is a completely different conversation we're having today. Like, I think we're legit talking stripping things, asterisks in this book, like really, really, really bad things for the program. But in the end all be all, that's not what it was. You can't deny it now. He did what he did. He got caught. It's like I said, for me, it's a black and white situation. And he's just going to be this weird guy in the history of college football. I don't even know. He's almost like an enigma to me. But it's like I said, for the people that thought God was going to drop the hammer yesterday, I think they're a little disappointed. But I think if you're a realistic Michigan fan, I think it's definitely more than I think the average person thought it was going to be. I know a bunch of people thought we weren't even going to get as much as we did. I thought that was unrealistic. And to be quite honest, I thought that was unwarranted. I think when it's all said and done, I think everything that happened is relatively fair. Now, Michigan already said they're going to appeal. that will make this way more juicy in a couple of years when it finally happens. I don't think people are going to care about it as much as then, but that will be a fun discussion for us to revisit this back then, because at that point it all gets entered into public record. Everything that's said, everything the NCAA has, everything Michigan has, it's all going to get entered. It's going to go in front of a judge. So the discovery part of it will be really, really fun. So I'm not going to keep going. Like I'll jump back in. I'll let you guys get in here because it's such a big topic. But overall, I think some of it was just and fair. And then I also think the people that were defending him, to hell him back, I think have to kind of let that narrative go now as well.
Good try. What do you think, buddy?
I mean, a couple things here. One, just kind of going off of one of the things that Bill had mentioned there, as far as the text messages go and, them being retrieved and things like that. Yeah, I mean, some of them were retrieved, like that is a fact, but it was also discovered that not all of them had been retrieved, and that was a big part of why, Sherrone Moore's penalty was only the 3 games there. And then just on top of that, like the report came out that Connor broke his phone into 1,000 pieces and threw it in a pond. So, granted, I'm sure his phone had more than just text to Sherrone Moore on it, but you don't do that kind of stuff if nothing is on your phone of
actions of an innocent man.
Another thing that Bill didn't get into that this is one of the things I was kind of following there. Well, actually 2 things. One is, I don't know if you guys remember when it first happened, but one of their assistant coaches, Chris Partridge, was basically the guy who was the martyr for this team. Like, he was the one that Michigan kind of threw under the bus. They fired him. They're like, we want nothing to do with you. Essentially, it was like, you and Connor did all of this, and, you guys are on your own there, and, we're throwing you guys to the wolves, and whatever happens kind of happens. But if you go back and look through this entire thing with Denard and Jim and Connor and all these guys, like, Chris Partridge's name is not listed in there anywhere. And I will say for him, it is a good thing that, Mike McDonald is now coaching in Seattle, and he has him on staff there. So he's not in college anyway, but I vividly remember like that happening. Cause I'm like, all right, like this is about to be the start of it all. Like they're getting rid of position coaches. And, I'm thinking this is about to be some big thing. And the guy at the time who they were really pinning it on, not all of it, but, like I said, he got fired right away. Ultimately comes out that he was completely exonerated of any wrongdoing there. Another thing that I saw that didn't come out in the report at all was, again, just kind of getting back to the beginning of it. There was a time frame where Connor Stalions had some sort of LLC with Blake Corum. And if that's the case, one of 2 things have to be true. Either Connor forged his name, which I would not be surprised at all if that was the case. Connor Stalions is an absolute lunatic, but that's illegal. So if that is the case, then there should be some sort of action regarding that. But on the flip side of it, if Blake Corum was knowingly, a participant in that, or they had this business together, then, Blake Corum should have been looked at as complicit in that. And, then you start looking at other things like the eligibility of Blake Corum and things like that. Granted, he got hurt and didn't play, the tail end of the season there. So as far as like the championship game and things like that, like we won't even get to that. But those are just a couple of the things that I thought about originally, just like reading through everything and thinking back to when the incident first happened.
So for Partridge, I swore he got in trouble for something else, but I know he got linked to it in that I don't think he cooperated like the first time they came to campus, but I also thought he got canned for something else, something to do with like holding like tryouts during like a dead period, or it was something weird like that.
That shouldn't get you fired though.
Well, I mean, I guess,
But
if you know the loom of all this is coming, I think it probably does.
I will say, though, the one other thing, though, Alex, got a question for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
Hypothetically, if you know that Dan Lanning is going to the NFL and he won't coach at Oregon again for the next 10 years, but you win a national championship like before he leaves, do you spend $20 million every single time that happens? Like $20 million, $20 million is the cost. Like, think about like Phil Knight. Think about, biggest Oregon boosters you could possibly think of.
Are you asking?
Do they spend $20 million for?
$20 million?
Yeah, Dan
absolutely.
Lanning goes to the NFL, 10-year, 10-year show calls or whatever for whatever happens.
Yeah.
You do it every time. And so for that to be the case, honestly, at this point, I tip my hat to Michigan. I mean, they were able to do this. There was no real, granted, you have the punishments for some of the coaches and things like that, but there's no real punishment necessarily for them. And this, to me, of course, I feel a certain way as like an Ohio State fan, but as a whole, this to me is more of a black eye for the NCAA. You've had schools like this upcoming year, Akron can't play in a bowl game because of players in the past being dumb and having bad grades. But the NCAA came out in this report and basically said, hey, Michigan 100% deserves some sort of postseason ban in the future. However, there's so many players on the past that, were a part of this that we don't want to punish these future players, which I can respect that. But at the same time, that has never been the case with the NCAA in the past there. And if I'm being 100% honest, what this ruling did or what it shows is that if I'm a big time program, if I'm Oregon, if I am, a Texas A&M, or if I'm, a lot of these other big time schools that just haven't won recently, I am doing my damnedest to find my next Connor Stallions. And I don't care what happens. If we win a national championship, you pay that price of $20 million, the show calls, the all this stuff that ultimately happened. You do that every single time if it means you win a national championship. And I think that's a picture that the NCAA is basically come out and said, they didn't directly say it, but they might as well have came out and said, hey, you do this is your punishment. Go from there.
I think it's a little different in that
nothing about this penalty will deter people from doing it again in the future.
I don't disagree with that. I think it's also, but again, I think to go back to the recent trend with what they've been doing is not to, enlist that type of punishment, simply because, again, I think a big part of it is the last 3 times they've gone to court, they've gotten embarrassed. I'm not going to say that's going to happen this time, but there are, again, Michigan released a statement right away and said there are things that, they conducted, investigate or conversations, and they did things they weren't allowed to do. And again, people have to realize that the NCAA is not a legal body. They do not have legal powers. They're not judges. They hire lawyers, they employ lawyers and investigators and things like that, but they don't have the power of subpoenas and things of that nature. So when they get taken to court, like Tennessee did 2 years ago and things like that, and then you show a real judge how you obtain certain things, the judge goes, yeah, you can't use that. Like, that's illegal. You can't do that. And the last 3 times they've had major court cases go in front of major judges, they've gotten embarrassed every time. And I think this is another case of where, you know what? Michigan has the biggest endowment, or one of the two biggest endowments in the country. We'll take the money, and we'll do this, and this, and we'll save face a little bit. And if you agree with that, some do, some don't, and it'll at least look like we did something. And I really think that's where we're at. And to Cottrell's point, I think it's a part of a bigger conversation of where I think these schools, for what's going on now, the amount of money that's in play now, and all these other factors, the college football world has passed the NCAA by very quickly, and they are not equipped to govern these schools right now. And if they can't figure it out quickly and change it, then I think that's why you're seeing the Big Ten commissioner have meetings with the SEC commissioner, and they've had phone calls with the ACC commissioner, because they want to come up with something that I think is more fair, but also a governing body that is equipped to deal with what's going on in the real world with college football right now. Because I don't care, what you think about the NCAA in general. They've dropped the ball in NIL horribly, and they've dropped the ball on a couple other things, and and some people would count this case as one of them. And if you made that argument, I would understand it. But again, like this is going to end up in court. And like I said, it's going to get, God willing, a year or 2 years from now, we'll have another conversation about this when all the real details about it come out. And I'm sure we'll get some of them between now and then. More and more of it's going to leak. But, there needs to be real change in college football. And maybe this is one of the things that, helps move that along. Because to Cottrell's point, if you're Oregon, is $20 million really a drop in the bucket for you to pay to try to win a natty, to finally bring one of those trophies home to Oregon? No. That's, I hate to say it, but Portnoy was saying yesterday, that's, it's ashtray money for Michigan. It's money you find in the couch for them. This is not $20 million is a blip on the radar for a big school like Michigan or Oregon even Ohio State, Notre Dame. If you don't think all these schools would line up and be like, here's a check for $20 million, like, let me do what I want to do for a year and see where the chips fall. It's crazy. And I think messaging, I think Cottrell brought up a good point. The message you're sending is probably not the right one. And again, the problem for me is they're not equipped to send out the right one. They are not equipped to govern college football right now. I mean, hell, they came in. They're struggling with college basketball, let alone college football. Something's got to change, and I've been saying that for years. And I was saying that before any of this happened with Michigan. The NCAA is a mess. I mean, since Cottrell's known me, I've been trashing the NCAA. That's how long ago this started. I think they suck, and I've been on record with it numerous times, and they're not worth the pot they piss in right now.
Well, we could talk about the NCAA for hours, I'm sure. What do you think about the punishment? Put it in the chat. Do you agree with it? Disagree? Was it too harsh? Was it just right? We'll find out. But we're gonna keep this ball. It's been a half an hour on this topic. We got to keep the ball rolling. And personally, if I'm being honest, as an Oregon fan, I didn't care one way or other. The only reason you guys care is because it's Bill's school and it's your top rival. I don't think anybody else in the country really cares that much. And after seeing the punishment, it's nothing. I said in the chat earlier, group chat earlier with us, that it was a nothing punishment. It's literally a slap on the wrist. If you want to actually impact the Michigan, you need to give them a postseason ban or take away scholarships, and they did neither of those. So, like you guys said, they dropped the ball here, and personally, for me, it just seems like a bunch of wasted time. They blew this whole thing up to literally add up to nothing. That's what it feels like as an outside perspective. So, I mean, it is what it is.
I think there's a lot of people that probably feel the way Alex does at this point. for this to go on as long as it has, and then it come down today, and then be like, okay, like, I think a lot of people thought outside of Ohio State, Michigan. I mean, Michigan State fans are crying all over the place, but outside a lot of those people, I think a lot of people are like, okay, like, it's over and done with. Can we please move on type thing? So I think that is probably a general consensus across the country wide.
Yeah, I'm just glad that it's over. We got some sort of resolution. If they're appealing it, obviously there's going to be more information will drop throughout the season, and obviously we'll get confirmation on what game Sharon Moore will be missing. So that will play a big impact next season. But in other news that we got going on, Oregon Duck wide receiver Jurion Dickey has been suspended indefinitely from the Oregon Ducks football team. Coach Dan Lanning announced the suspension earlier this week, citing the team's rules of being respectful and on time. Any sort of reaction to, obviously, like I said, this kid has not had a lot of impact on the program. 2 catches for 14 yards over the last 2 seasons. Former 5-star kid. Any initial reaction, Cottrell? I know you were feeling some sort of way that this was him maybe losing the locker room, or this was actually a bigger impact to the team than we think it is.
No, so it's not. I was more so joking with you when I say losing the locker room. I more so meant it as this is a receiver who, of course, former 5-star, but I was saying it more so jokingly in the sense of this is another receiver that was in the same receiver room last year that had a player in Trayshawn Holden spit on an Ohio State player. So I was saying the receiver room in general, not actually the entire locker room being lost there. But I mean, you can look at this, one of two ways. I understand he doesn't have much production here at this time frame, but with this being, I think this would have been his junior season. And like you said, he was a former 5-star. I think he was the second best receiver in his class in 2022 or 2023, whatever year it was. And you also have to remember that Oregon is coming off this past off season where they lost Evan Stewart, where a lot of people think he's maybe gone the entire year, or if not a large chunk of it. So he probably would have had an opportunity to play here. And, at Oregon, as prolific as their offense can be, we've seen from receivers in the past, all you really need is 1 year to go off at Oregon, and you got the potential to go to the NFL and, make a roster and really get things going there. So I will say I give credit to Dan Lanning for, even with him being a 5-star, nobody is above what the team rules are. And so give Dan Lanning credit for that. And even knowing that he might be a little thin at the receiver spot, not saying that they are, but, just given the injury there, they're kind of looking for that next guy to kind of step up there, especially with the losses to the draft as well there. He said, to hell with all that. I don't care. We're setting the standard here, and we want everybody to take accountability for what they've done.
Bill, does this what do you think about this move? Do you think it's a big step for Dan Lanning to suspend a team or suspend a player, or do you think he'll be back this season even?
I think with the little that we know about it, other than kind of what Dan Lanning said, I think it's, even if you read that, quote there, I think we needed a break from him. He needed a break from us. I don't know what that means. Are there, is he, yelling at coaches? Is he, confronting, other players or confronting coaches? I don't know, really what all that entails. I mean, again, I think if he's really out of line, if you're Dan Lanning, you can't have a guy being able to, kind of run wild and then have everybody else stand around and be like, I can't say that to the coach. You know what I mean? So, if he was really, out of control that bad, then I absolutely think it's the right move by Dan Lanning. To his other part of his quote, you got to have everybody moving in the same direction and be on the same page. And that's hard enough to do under great conditions with, 85, 18 to 21-year-old kids. So, if he was taking away from that or causing drama behind the scenes or in the locker room or anything like that, then yeah, I mean that's a bad egg, and that's not an egg you want around a bunch of other kids that you're trying to coach, in one direction and have everybody on the same page and try to win a national championship, which, a lot of people think Oregon is capable of doing this year. So, again, on the surface, I don't like to always side with the coach, but Dan Lanning doesn't strike me as the vindictive type of guy, or like somebody that would do this without thought. Because I feel like Dan Lanning actually is probably very much a player's coach. So I feel like, he probably kind of dug his own grave here, in my opinion.
Hey, well, Dan Lanning said it best. We have 2 rules. I like the way that he didn't directly call him out and say exactly what he did. Because like he said in his quote here, we've got 2 team rules: be respectful and be on time. There are some pieces of that where I felt like he needed a break from us. So he didn't identify which of those pieces were, whether it was excessive tardiness, or he left a lot for interpretation, letting the player kind of save face. I think that he's got 2. It doesn't go one of 2 directions. 1, he turns his act around, comes back, and he's a leader on the team. Or 2, he's in the transfer portal once it opens up. I mean, that's going to be the 2 options.
Let's be real here. We already know how his story plays out. He's going to go. He's going to hit the portal. He's going to be the number 1 receiver at New Mexico State or somewhere. And we're going to never really hear from him again. He's going to have like 800 yards next year, be their number 1 receiver, but a guy that's really just forgotten about moving forward here. And I don't want to put this on him. I'm just saying that we've seen this story play out a million times before.
I don't want to put this on after I just completely bury him after what I think is going to happen.
Well, look, I hope you're wrong. I hope he turns it around, because there's nothing that people love more than a turnaround story.
I hope I'm wrong.
And I hope he does too, because obviously 5-star kid, he's got the talent. He hasn't had a chance to show it. So I'd like to see if this kid can turn it around and be impactful to the team. Just like you said, especially with the loss of Evan Stewart. We're not light at wide receiver, but a 5-star kid is still a 5-star kid. He's still probably better than the next man up. So we just need to see him get back to the winning mindset, and hopefully it's with Oregon.
Was it for the year, or is it indefinite?
It's indefinite.
Just indefinite.
Oh, he probably plays this year.
Maybe.
We'll
indefinite 2 weeks before the season. I mean,
I get that, but I will say this. Like, I would feel like if you're a 5-star kid, you do to Cottrell's point, and even Alex's, I think this only plays out 2 ways. He goes, all right, I'm out of line. I got to change what I'm doing. I have the opportunity of a lifetime here. I am a very, obviously, like you said, 5-star. I'm a very athletically gifted kid. I have to change my attitude and get back on the field with my teammates and get back on the field with a very good football team. Or he goes home and goes, I'm not the problem. Screw him, screw the Ducks, whatever else. And he hits the portal. And he either goes, maybe finds another pig program, or, maybe goes to New Mexico. I don't know. But, it's, those are the two outcomes it could be. I mean, so hopefully I feel like more than often than not, when kids like this kind of get the actual real reality check and get sat down and like, you know what, you're a 5-star kid and you obviously think you're God's gift to the world. I'm telling you point blank, we can win football games without you. So you can either shape up or ship out. That usually, kind of checks the ego most of the time. I would say this: if you're an Oregon fan, if it doesn't check the ego,
you don't want him anyway.
You don't want him anyway. Let him hit the portal. Like he can't get out of Eugene fast enough for me. Then, honestly, if I'm an Oregon fan, if that's really his stance, and he's like, screw Dan Lanning, like I'm me, I'm going to do me, bro. Get away from my program. Not a guy you want there anyway. Just my opinion.
I will say just the one thing to add here too. Did verify he was number 2 receiver in the 2023 class, only behind Zachariah Branch.
I was just going to say, who's won that?
Zachariah Branch. It was the number 1 receiver coming out that year. So,
do you know the rest of the top 5?
Of receivers specifically?
Yeah.
Jonte Cook is one of them. Hakeem. Nick Harbor from South Carolina is another one. And then rounding it out is Hakeem Williams at Florida State.
All right, it's not a horrible class.
All right. Well, we're going to obviously hear more about this throughout the season. Hopefully, we'll get updated with sooner rather than later that he's back on the team. But I'm sure if he decides to be dismissed permanently, we'll update you on that as well. But some bigger news came out. What was it? Monday night. I was eating dinner at Outback Steakhouse, and all of a sudden, this text started rolling through. That's why I shout out to Outback. Alice Springs chicken on the way. So I'm getting these text messages from Bill Cottrell, racking up my text message count about Mateer being in a gambling scandal. Let's just go over that real quick. I'm interested to see how this plays out. He, of course, says the allegations that I once participated in sports gambling are false. I, of course, believe him. John Mateer for Heisman. But like I said, there were screenshots of past Venmo transactions from 2022, sending money to a friend that were labeled as sports gambling, and another one saying UCLA versus USC game. It was also happened to be the day after the game. Not a great look. He claims it was an inside joke. The other Venmo labels were too inappropriate to show on the show, so I didn't show those. But there was clearly a long line of joking Venmo receipts, as you would call them, back and forth for all of his Venmo transactions. So is it a joke? Was it just poor? Is it a really poor joke, or do you think there's more to this?
I say this, and I'll go quick here because my stance is very easy. One way or another, John Mateer is an idiot. Like, I don't know what way you slice it. Is he an idiot for having inside jokes and having a public Venmo that would ultimately indicate that he is gambling on sports? Possibly. That could possibly it. Or he's just the biggest possible idiot for gambling on sports and then having a paper trail and then labeling it sports gambling. So one way or another, whatever side of the coin he ultimately falls on, he's an idiot here. And I say that, like, of course, like I was a college kid, at one point, and college kids sometimes do stupid things that are unexplainable. This, of course, falls under that realm. Like, we're gonna get down to the bottom of it, one way or another here. But this is one of those things where it feels like it is absolutely unexplainable. And I'm hoping that this wasn't the case. This was this inside joke. He was just being kind of dumb with friends, and that's ultimately it there, because this was his true freshman year at Washington State there. But I just think it's absolutely crazy that this happened. But the quieter part about it is it's even more wild that this was 3 years ago, and people from Texas, there was Texas fans ultimately found this. Who goes through Venmo transactions from 3 years ago? Like, that is diabolical work from Texas fans.
Who doesn't have private Venmo transactions also?
I mean,
what?
I personally don't. I don't really use Venmo that much, but I personally don't, because you got to actually go in and change those settings. It's dumb that Venmo's automatic default is public transactions there. But as a college kid too, like you're not thinking about turning that kind of stuff off.
That's true. Bill, what's your opinion?
I mean, I agree with Cottrell in that either way, it's probably a good thing he can throw a football real well, because he is not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I'll say this: 3 years ago, what he's what, in high school?
No, he's a freshman.
Freshman college.
You're 3 months removed from being in high school.
Yeah.
Young kids do dumb things. I will tell you this. I mean, listen, the NCAA already said they're looking at it. So, I mean, it popped up on the radar real quick. I would say I want to give the kid the benefit of the doubt. I do. I say the USC, UCLA thing is a little too much of a coincidence for me. It's very specific. It's the morning after the game. And then for him to wipe everything right away, again.
That's a panic move.
Well, panic moves.
Panic. It's too late, bro.
Hey,
Why
correct.
do you panic?
Well, hey,
Why do you panic,
correct.
though?
Correct. Ask Sharon Moore. Why do you panic? So it's, it's, again, I'm not saying the pile of wood is on fire, but like it's smoking. And if you're a Texas kid, why would some random Texas kid go back 3 years into John Mateer's Venmo? Was he tipped off? Was it something else? Who knows? That part of it's weird to me. What Texas student, like to your point, gets up on a Saturday morning and goes, you know what? I'm going to go on John Mateer's Venmo, and you know what? I'm just going to keep going back and see if I find something incriminating. That's so random and just crazy to me. Like, I feel like somebody sent somebody a message. It was like, hey, check this out. Again, I hope he's just really dumb. And
you want to hear a crazy conspiracy theory of mine?
And it's and even more so. I think Cottrell said this. Cottrell said this in the chat. If it is an inside joke, it's the dumbest inside joke I've ever heard in my life. It's not funny. Like, it's stupid. So, man, I again, like I said, I hope, because I hope for his sake that there really is nothing, because if the NCAA finds one little thing, like, Oklahoma is going to have to sit him immediately, because they can't risk playing him, because sports gambling is a whole nother boat. So I hope for their sake and his sake there's nothing to it, because I feel like him transferring to Oklahoma after where he's been and what he's went through, he's really going to get a chance to play and, kind of further his career and show the country, what he is. So I'm hoping there's nothing to this.
I want to hear your theory, Alex.
Okay,
Me
so
too.
I was doing this deep dive on Twitter, just like read a bunch of comments, and someone actually was able to identify who the person was that he was Venmoing the money to, and it was a starting offensive lineman on the team at the time. So it was a teammate that he was paying. That guy is now actually playing, I think, a D3 with a team in Texas.
See, no, it's not really far-fetched now.
So he's in Oklahoma. Is there a thing where, hey, like, I got these Venmo transactions, are you doing sports betting? Like, you just got all this NIL money. Like, maybe you cut me off a piece. And he maybe said no. But either way, if this is if this is gambling in like a locker room setting, like, there's no way, unless the guy is the one who's turning on him, there's no way that he's going to get in trouble for this. It's not on a book. It's not sanctioned. There's no like bank records, going through like DraftKings or something like that. I don't think anything comes of this. But just a weird theory of mine that it just happens to come from Texas, the area where the player that he was paying now happens to play.
So what's crazy about this too, though, is that I was also looking into this a little bit more here. And hypothetically, if Mateer is guilty, do you guys know what his maximum punishment will be?
2-game suspension.
Close, but not quite.
No, I have no idea.
6 games. 6 games would be the absolute most he could possibly get for, like, if this comes out and it's real. And I'm thinking, like, that just sounds so crazy to me. Like, I feel like they're in so many other sports, and granted, yeah, they're professional sports, but like, you even think about sports betting in baseball, like, you are done. Like, you are out of there. Just look at, granted, I'm not saying he's Pete Rose or anything, but he's not betting on his team. He has no influence on, what's going on here. Clearly, this was just between him and a friend. Like, and 6 games is the most that he can get there. I was very surprised to see that from the NCAA's, regulations and things like that regarding this.
Nothing's going to come out this year, I don't think.
Even look at like the stuff we've seen in the NFL. Like, they've suspended guys for not even betting on football. Like, you can't even be in a team facility and open FanDuel. Like, So that is surprising, but not when it comes to the NCAA. Not for me. So.
Obviously, we're going to get more about this. I personally do not think any punishment comes out this year, and by next year, when he does something happen, he's going to be going to the NFL anyway. So, stay tuned. John Machi for Heisman. This is why you're all here. Is the SEC preview? I know that's what everyone's been tuning in and waiting for. Who's going to win the SEC? What do we? What are our opinions on it? Well, first off, we're going to start with the updated odds to actually win the conference. Obviously, Texas, Georgia, Alabama are the leading favorites with the sports books, followed by Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss, and then obviously Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt being the long shots in the conference. When you look at these odds, who do you guys think looks like the best bet, like the best value bet?
Best value bet?
Yeah, best value. Obviously, Texas at plus 210. You're not going to pick that. That's not value. I'm talking like, what about the plus thousands and up? Who do you think is the best value for your buck?
I mean, LSU at 5 is kind of nuts for me.
For me, honestly, I'm looking at 2, and they're right next to each other. You got South Carolina at plus 1,800, and then you got Florida right underneath them at plus 3,300. Now, I don't think Florida is going to get it done there, but
their schedule is brutal, bro.
I'd argue that they have the potential to have the best quarterback in the SEC this year. And when you have that, like we talked about it in shows past, quarterbacks matter so much in the landscape of college football. And so if DJ goes out and he has a special season, like plus 3,300 basically says like they have no shot. I think if things fall a certain way, they could possibly, end up somewhere there. And so I think just value-wise, Florida is one that makes sense to me. But then the big one, though, is South Carolina at plus 1,800. You have a quarterback returning. You still have monsters on the defensive side of the ball. You arguably have the best defensive player in all of the SEC and Dylan Stewart coming back. I think South Carolina is going to be a team to reckon with, and Shane Bieber has proven that he can get the most out of those guys there. And I think after the season that they had last year, just coming up short of making the college football playoff, a lot of those guys come back. They're going to be hungry. And they know they have what it takes to beat some of these big-time schools. Because even in the few games they lost last year, they lost to Texas in a tight game. They lost to Bama in a 2-point game. I think South Carolina knows they have what it takes to hang with the big dogs in this conference now.
I know you really like South Carolina, and I really don't disagree with anything you just said. I think they are definitely one of the teams that's worth taking a flyer on. And, I think I will say this, especially – the last decade, this is the most wide open, in my opinion, the SEC has been in a long time. I don't think you can definitively say, for the last decade or so, it's pretty much been, let's just pencil in Georgia coming out of the East and Alabama coming out of the West. And I don't see it that way this year. I think you could, I think everybody is just absolutely assuming Arch Manning's not going to, skip a beat and be this phenom. And I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying I still think this is his first year being a full-time starter. I think he's going to have hiccups. Georgia has for pretty much lack of a better term, starting a brand new quarterback. Alabama, we know they're I don't want to say struggle, but they were very undecided for a long time about, what they were going to do at that position this year. I think you get to Tennessee, they lost their quarterback. And then you get to LSU with Gus, and, I think he's probably the most sure thing, the first sure thing you run into on this list. At least I think obviously his ceiling to me isn't as high as Archie's, but I think his probably floor and what you can expect and what you'll definitely get out of him, I think is a little bit easier for LSU. Ole Miss, again, new quarterback. And then you get down to A&M and South Carolina. I think both teams are capable of making noise this year. I really do.
Bill, that was not the question.
What?
That was not Alex's question.
I know.
Going through everybody here.
No, I'm not. I was going to stop at Florida. because I love Florida. I'm a big DJ fan like you. We're going to get into it in a couple minutes, but their schedule is just – it might be worse than last year's. I don't know how they navigate it all. But I did see one thing today, which was fun. I think this is the first, it's only the first or second year in the last 20 that Vanderbilt didn't have the highest odds to win the SEC. So things are looking up for them.
So is Florida your value pick, Bill?
It's still LSU for me. I like South Carolina. I like Florida. I just, as much as I think Florida is a great value pick, it would be hard for me to put money on them because of their schedule. It's an absolute gauntlet. And like I said, I'm sure we'll break it down here in a couple minutes. But I just think LSU is in a better position than some of the teams ahead of them. That's all.
All right. Yeah, and when I look at this real quick, so I think the one that jumped out at me was if John Mateer does not face suspension, but Jay Ott in the backfield, Oklahoma at plus 65,000 is a crazy good value. Those are two lights out offensive studs, and the defense was top 20 last year as far as defense of overall defense. I don't know what I was trying to specify there. So I think I love Oklahoma at 65,000, and then Texas A&M at plus 1,600. Those are probably my two value bets. If I'm looking for most bang for my buck, those are the two I'm going to put some money on. But yeah, Bill just kind of exactly said what's next though. The schedules. We got everybody's schedule. At least the top contenders for the conference: Texas, Alabama, LSU, Florida, Georgia, Texas A&M. Let's take a look at these schedules. Does anything jump out at you right away when you look at these schedules as far as strength of schedule? Who has the toughest route? Who do you think is going to be able to walk into the SEC championship possibly? Anything really jump out at you guys when you look at these schedules?
I think for me, the first thing that I'm really looking at here is Texas' schedule. And I think that there is a possibility that we don't know what Texas truly is until November. I think there's a possibility that obviously I think there's a possibility they win week one. I think that game is going to be a toss-up one way or another there. But I think that you have, even with Ohio State, I don't know what they look like. Ohio State week one may be a completely different team than what they look like week 10. And I think post that Ohio State game for Texas, even with, me saying that I think Florida can be one of those teams that is, a good value at plus 3,300 there. I think Texas could probably go onto that game and play a B- game and take care of business there. But I don't necessarily know if that means, at that point they'd be 9-0, 10-0 going into the game against Georgia. And I think there's a possibility that they're still not legitimately one of the best schools in the country, even though at that point they'd be 9-0. They'd probably be number one in the AP poll, especially after, beating an Ohio State team, depending on how their season goes and things like that. But I think Texas's road looks really light, but I truly don't think that, even if they start off 9-0, I don't think we'll really know what Texas is until that Georgia game. But even with that said, though, if they start off the season on the flip side, let's say they lose to Ohio State, I still think that we may not know, that might not be Texas's ceiling. I think there's just so many question marks going into the Ohio State and Texas game that there's a chance that we still have no clue what either of those teams are after that game.
I love that we're getting that game week one, because it is absolutely it's going to anchor week one. But that being said, I'd rather see it week 3. I think it's a better football game in week 3. I think it's a better game because, assuming Julian Saint's going to start, he has 2 weeks under his belt and really kind of starts to feel comfortable. Texas works out the kinks for the first 2 weeks, then goes to Columbus. I would rather see it week 3. I don't hate that it's week 1, but I think Cottrell's points are very valid. I don't think whatever the outcome of that game is, I don't think it's very telling either way for either program of what they are. I mean, unless somebody comes out and looks terrible, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I think, again, what Cottrell just said, we can all look back on that game in week 1, come week 10, and I don't think either team is anywhere near the same as what they are week 1.
I think that's the advantage of them being 1 and 2 at the beginning of the year is the loss. I don't think will hurt either team. Obviously, it's not a conference loss, and it's not going to be looked at as a bad loss unless Texas or Ohio State absolutely tank, which is I don't think either team will. I think it's honestly a free loss, and it's a free chance to try something new. It's a free chance to make risks on during the game, fourth down calls, fourth and goal situations. I mean, there's just onside kicks. I mean, there's so many things that you can just try, and it's a risk free. I think the game's gonna be fantastic. But I do like what you said, Coach. Texas's schedule. So we really said besides Florida, I think Oklahoma is obviously always going to be a game that can go either way with any rivalry situation, especially with Oklahoma's new additions on the offensive side, Heisman John Mateer. And then we got the Georgia and then the Texas A&M game at the end. Who knows how? Again, rivalry games to end the season that actually matter and count. That could be the deciding game for both teams. So I think how the season ends is very good to be crucial for Texas. Having a late season bye before Georgia, I think, is going to be huge for them, as Georgia does not have a bye before Texas. So Texas will have the extra week to prepare for Georgia, and I think that could be what decides the game ultimately.
Honestly, looking at this, I mean, granted, I know it's the SEC, but I really don't think any of these teams have a true gauntlet besides LSU. Like, I think LSU's end to the season is absolutely freaking brutal. South Carolina, and then you have to go at Vanderbilt. Who knows if that's going to be a night game or not. And then you got Texas A&M, and then you got the bye, but then you got Bama. Like, that 4-game stretch there is going to be crucial. And I 100% can see, a path where they lose all 4 of those games. Like, I 100% can see that being possible for them. Now, if it was home versus Vanderbilt, I might be singing a different tune there, but Vanderbilt at home, and even though they have South Carolina A&M at home and Bama at home, like, that's definitely a positive for them. That's a really rough stretch there. And then, ending the year at Oklahoma, I'm not saying, I'm not going as far as to say John Mateer for Heisman and things like that, but Oklahoma's going to be a damn good football team this upcoming year, and that won't be, the rollover game that it has been probably the last couple of years.
I mean, speaking of Oklahoma, in tough stretches, the end of their schedule between October 11th and November 29th, listen to these teams they have to play in order. Texas, then South Carolina, then Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, and then LSU. That's 6 of those are ranked teams. Obviously, Missouri, who knows what they're going to look like this year, but that's 5 out of 6 straight games against are going to be ranked opponents. I think Oklahoma's got definitely the toughest stretch. Obviously, it's not on this board right here, but that's a gauntlet, especially going to end at LSU.
So with that said, though, I mean, I imagine if you got John Mateer for Heisman, you got to be either in the playoffs or damn close to it. So I'm imagining that means you got
true. Travis Hunter won last year.
And they were who did they lose to? BYU? No, they lost to Kansas. They were a Kansas loss away from being in the playoff. Well, I mean, they lost in the Big 12. They would have lost in the Big 12 championship game too, but they were definitely right there in those playoff considerations up until week 11, week 12.
Okay, I'll give you that. Go ahead, Bill.
Travis was also a freak situation too. Two-way player, and just we talked about it enough. He was a generational type player. It was going to be hard to ignore what he did, regardless of how good Colorado was.
Maybe John Mateer goes and plays safety on the 8-4 Oklahoma team. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe you can Venmo people after the game. I will say I'm still looking at Florida's, man. I mean, you look at that 4-game stretch they have. They're going to go at LSU, Miami, bye, Texas A&M, and then their last. They come off a bye, have Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Florida State. I would say DJ's in that same category as Mateer. If Florida is 8-4 or not, I'll say if Florida's 9-3, they're probably in the playoff. I don't know how you would keep them out with that schedule. And if they're 9-3, that means DJ is probably playing really, really well. And I feel like he'd be right in the thick of the Heisman talk at that point. I don't
So
see how he wouldn't be.
can I ask you guys like an honest question here? And I promise it has nothing to do with the matchup week 1.
Okay.
This like I want to know, what am I missing with this Texas team? Obviously they bring back Arch, but like I feel like I'm the only one that is seeing how much they've actually lost last year. You lose your
Oh no. I'm in the same boat as you.
you lose your top 2 running backs. You lose Isaiah Bond. You don't have Matthew Golden anymore. You lose your top tight end in Gunnar Helm. You lose your left tackle and your right tackle to the league. Obviously, Arch is back, but Quinn was your starting quarterback last year. And on defense, you lose your best player in Jahdae Barron. Like, I get it. Texas is one of those schools. They reload all the time, but that is a ton of production gone from last season with them, and to just have them as the number, not even just the number 1 team, but have them as this team that is the favorite to win the SEC. Like, I personally don't see that. Like, I thought when I was going to look at the odds, it would be Georgia as the number 1 team. I thought LSU would honestly be the number 2 team, just with how much LSU is bringing back this year. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that that's going to be the way that everything plays out, but I thought with what both of those, well, Georgia with what they've brought in, and then adding to the team that they had last year, and then LSU with everything that they brought back, those would kind of be the top 2 teams there. But I want to know if am I missing something with Texas that you guys are seeing, or what's going on there?
I'll say this. I brought this up the other day in another discussion. I don't think there's a guarantee that, to your point, and I've mentioned this, and I don't want to get too far into it because we're still 2 shows away, but the quarterback position this year, I think, is incredibly important. And there's so many of these programs that are starting new people, and they can't all be great. The odds of that happening are just insane. I don't think there's any guarantee that you get the same numbers out of Archie that you got out of Quinn last year. So if you're to your point, if you're not getting those numbers out of Archie with all the other production on the outside and the running back room, and then to your point, I'd argue they lost their top 2 or 3 defensive players from last year. I don't know how, other than the hype of Archie Manning, I don't know how a lot of people are everybody's just so matter of the fact, Texas is the best team in the country. I don't see it. I don't. And I was critical of them last year. I thought they were very good, but I thought they had a better team 2 years ago when they lost. And that was one of the things I said against them last year. I thought they lost important people from the year before, and they weren't going to go all the way. There's a lot of people that thought Texas was going to win last year with Quinn Ewers. I didn't see it. And until Archie Manning goes out there and has that stretch where he looks untouchable for 5 or 6 weeks, and I know he's capable of going into Georgia and winning, or going into, we'll see how he looks against Ohio State week 1. That's going to be very telling for me. So it's until I see all that, I am not of the ilk just the Longhorns are some runaway number 1 team this year. I don't see it.
Alex, do you see it differently?
I do. And I get that they're returning 14, or they're replacing 14 stars from last year, but the pieces that are coming back are going to be instrumental. And the new pieces that they added. We forget that there are returning 1,000-yard rusher Quintravion Wisner, who's arguably the best tight end in the transfer portal from Cal, Jack Andres. He had 525 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns last year in Cal's terrible offense. And now he's going to be actually catching passes from someone who's actually able to sling it. So I think that's going to be a huge get. Obviously, Cottrell, you mentioned the tight end earlier. I don't think they're going to miss a beat this season. Jack Andres, I was watching some film on him. If the dude can catch, dude can block, he's going to be an impact player right away. Like I said, the returning of a 1,000-yard rusher in Wisner, that is argumentatively the biggest return of Texas's offense. Like I said, they are starting 4 new offensive linemen that are going to be tested week 1 against Ohio State. So we'll see how they hold up. And honestly, even if they win or lose against Ohio State, seeing how the offensive line plays together that first game with under immense stress is going to be telling on how the season's going to go. If Arch can be only sacked maybe 2 or 3 times, I would be hopeful for what kind of season they could have. But if he's running for his life the whole time, getting sacked 6, 7 times, getting knocked down 12 times, I'm going to be concerned for how Texas is going to look going into SEC play. And then we can't forget on the defensive side of the ball, they got defensive end Colin Simmons had 9 sacks last year, and arguably the best linebacker in the conference, and Anthony Hill Jr. had 16 and a half tackles for losses last season and 8 sacks as well. So they're returning core pieces of their offense. They're adding great pieces to their offense as well, and the defense is going to be spoken for. The defense, I don't think, will miss a beat. So I think, Texas, people have a reason to be high on Texas.
And they got Malik Muhammad in the secondary, who I am high on as well. But I think, for me, the defense really isn't the concern for me. It's more so the offense. And I say that because we really don't know what Arch is yet. Like, we showed glimpses last year in certain games, and I get it. He was a former 5-star quarterback. And for me, as an Ohio State fan, like, let me put this in perspective here as well. I don't know what Julian's saying is. Like, I don't know for sure that he's going to be this great quarterback. I think he can play. I've seen him, Elite 11. I saw his high school highlight tapes. Like, I know he has a good arm. I feel the same way about Arch. But at least with Julian, I know that he's throwing the ball to Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and Max Clare, who was an all Big Ten tight end last year. I know for a fact those are 3 weapons that if you put the ball in their facility, like in their vicinity, they're going to catch the ball. With this Texas team, even if Arch is playing well, I don't know who those weapons are. Like, you talk about Wisner, the running back there, but as a whole, like, from that receiving core, like, I don't know if they're bringing back weapons that are going to actually elevate Arch's game, or is this going to be a situation where he's got to be Superman and to get them to where they want to go?
See, that's the thing about good quarterbacks is that you don't have to elevate the quarterback. The quarterback elevates you. And the way that he's relating with his teammates, where he's, like I said, they have the videos all off season long of him going to his players' houses, hanging out, obviously off campus, like building bonds. Like, the dude is a born leader. Like, you can tell just by looking at how he carries himself on the field and off the field. Like I said, it doesn't matter. He's going to elevate the players around him to be better. Tom Brady didn't always have the best team statistically or even capability-wise. He elevated those guys. I'm not comparing him to Tom Brady. I'm just saying as an example. Arch, I think, is going to be able to elevate those guys to be better and play better. So, and because everyone knows the nation is watching when Arch is under center. They're going to need to be, and they're going to be at their best. That's why I think Texas has a shot to make the SEC championship.
But it's also a lot of pressure. And I can't believe you actually said with a straight face in the beginning of your breakdown that the receivers actually have somebody that can sling the ball to them now. Like, that's like Quinn Ewers or some piece of trash the last 2 years.
No. I said the tight end transferring from Cal now has a quarterback that can sling it to him. I said the one player who is transferring in. I did not say Texas players. I was talking about the transfer tight end specifically.
If Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden are still at Texas, I think I'm looking at this situation differently.
Agreed.
Well, hey, everyone's an unknown until they're not. So
correct. And again, I'm not sitting here saying that Archie isn't going to be everything that everybody thinks he's going to be.
Same.
But again, it's
devil's advocate.
Yeah, it's not that. It's just I've always been, I'm a show me guy. Like, show me you're everything. You know what I mean? Like, Michigan's no different. Like, I'm hearing all these people that are going to camp and watching Underwood throw, and he's this, and that. I don't care what he does at practice. I don't. And to some degree, like, we've watched all these kids go to Elite 11 and 7-on-7. I get all that, but they're not even in pads. Like, they're not. You can't touch them. They're throwing to the best kids in the country. And there's still kids that stand out there, don't get me wrong, but it's so different than being in a game. And it's like, until you're in the game, and to your point, like you said, until I see, Caleb Downs blitz and sack Arch. I want to see what Arch does the next play. Is he jittery? Does he have quick feet? Does he get rid of the ball too quick because he's afraid to get hit again? Or is he standing there like a composed kid, 5-star that we think he is, and, let routes develop and then throw the ball? Like, that's the type of stuff I want to see. To Cottrell's point, it's the same thing with Julian saying. I've seen the tapes. The kid is a natural of a throw of a ball that I've seen in a long time. But what's that going to look like with pads on with people in his face? Like, I want to see that. You know what I mean? I want to see what one Underwood looks like in a real game. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see all these, like, we saw Gunnar Stockton for a quarter and a half, and it was a lot of run plays. What is he going to look like when he has to throw the ball 30 times a game? Terrible. I don't know. And it might be. And my point to all that is there's not a shot that all of these situations turn out good. They're just not going to. I don't want to say somebody's going to stink, but somebody's not going to be, the superstar that they're supposed to be. So, you know what I mean? It's again, that Ohio State Texas game week 1 has so many storylines. And again, I hope Arch is what he's supposed to be, because again, I think it turns Texas, really back into kind of the elite powerhouse, and it'll be good for college football to watch him for the next couple of years. But I am never a fan of kind of the crowning of people before they play.
It's actually a great question that you lead me to now for both of you guys. Just like you said, not every situation can work. Who do you think is the most likely QB to not work?
In the SEC?
Yeah, in the SEC, and all these new quarterback situations. Like, which QB do you think is the least likely to actually?
If I'm being honest with you guys, like, I think it's a name that we haven't said yet, but
I know exactly what it is.
I'm going over to Texas A&M.
Oh,
I'm going Marcel Reed as a starting quarterback at A&M. He was the guy who took over for Connor Wegman due to injury, due to poor performance and things like that at A&M. But that A&M team lost a ton as well, especially offensively. They're bringing back their running backs and Le'Veon Moss and Reuben Owens, but they're losing a ton of production at the wide receiver position. Their 4 top receivers are no longer with the team, and Noah Thomas, who's actually over at Georgia. You got Moose Muhammad, who went to the NFL. You got Jahdae Walker, who went to the NFL. And they had another kid actually hit the portal and go out of A&M there. So I think people are really high on this A&M team. I think a big part of it is because of their defense. But if I'm being honest, I think that offense is going to struggle, and that A&M team is going to fall kind of flat this upcoming year. I thought last year was their window. Like, last year was the year for them to make a lot of noise with all the talent they had on that roster. To me, I think there's a lot of expectations on this A&M team, and I think we're going to see that A&M team not be anywhere close to what a lot of people thought they would be this year.
I like that answer. It's not where I thought you were going to go.
Me neither.
I think me and Alex probably thought you were going to the same place, but I'm not going to go that place either. I'm going with the kid that I just mentioned in Georgia. I'm going Gunnar Stockton. I don't think he has the ceiling of a DJ, of an Arch, of a Julian Saint. I don't think he's that ilk. I don't think he's that type of prospect. I just don't. And I think if they struggle, I don't think they really have option B there. And I think there's a lot of pressure on him with them pretty much, letting Carson Beck walk out the door for whatever our feelings are about him. But the guy won a bunch, a couple of really big football games. I think them letting him walk out the door and be like, you know what, Stockton's our guy, I think it puts a lot of pressure on him. And again, I think it was spur of the moment, and they only had certain packages working for him. But watching him in that bowl game last year, it was not. If I'm a Bulldog fan, I have my fingers crossed, and I have a lot of question marks at that position, and I'm hoping it all plays out well. Because if not, I think they're in trouble.
Well, real quick here, Alex, before you go, I can understand where you're coming from there with that, Bill, but I also think it is important to, what I was saying. I think that it also applies here to Gunner. They brought in Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas, two guys who are – Zachariah Branch has the potential to be the most electric player in all of college football. And Noah Thomas is a 6'6" receiver who has a ton of experience playing in the SEC. I think he may have even had 1,000 yards last year at A&M. But they actually brought in weapons that Georgia team did not have last year. I do think it's one thing to get thrown into the fire there, and he didn't look like he was really prepared for it. But I also loved what Georgia did. They were proactive, getting weapons. I think that's going to make his life a lot easier there. And I think, they're putting him in a position to have success.
And, for me, it's going to be the new starting quarterback at Alabama, and Ty Simpson. I think he's gonna lose the starting job by the midway point in the season. I say let's look at their schedule here. I think they definitely make the change after that South Carolina game at the latest. You look back at his previous stats, he's had a lot of garbage time. He's never started a collegiate game. Obviously, Jalen Milroe has been the workhorse there. This is a complete 180 as far as turning the table on the offense, as far as quarterback play styles. I think he plays more into Kalen DeBoer's preferred style at quarterback, more of a pocket guy who only uses his legs when he absolutely has to. But in his limited time, in garbage time, the dude's completing just over 50% of his passes. I'm not liking what I see as far as his decision-making goes as well. But like you said, he does have Ryan Williams to throw it down to. So the worst-case scenario, just chuck it up there somewhere and he'll go get it. But I think that Ty Simpson is probably going to be the most likely to lose the starting position by the end of the year. I know there was a freshman, I think Austin Mack, I believe was his name. I could be wrong on the first name, but something Mack.
Keelan Russell is, I think is their guy.
Yes. I know that in camp, Austin Mack was pushing hard on Ty Simpson's heels to get that starting job. At least that was the report out of the Alabama camp before they announced Ty Simpson as a starter. I think he's going to be the guy that loses that starting position to whoever is going to be the backup. I think he loses it by, like I said, by that, by the LSU game. I think that's when they'll make the switch. But I think that's going to be the one that works out the least. But I also have Gunnar Stockton close second. What I saw last year, obviously, was not impressed with it. I think that he doesn't have the arm talent Carson Beck has. I think it's a big step back as far as quarterback play. But they got weapons like Zachariah Branch. So can they just get the ball in the hands of the playmakers? Are we going to see a lot of short dump downs? Because like I said, if you give Zachariah Branch the ball in space, we all know what he can do. Obviously, being a phenomenal kick returner at USC, but obviously was very underutilized at USC. Should have been utilized a lot more on the offense. But yeah, I think Ty Simpson's my biggest bust as far as the SEC quarterbacks, especially the ones that are just really kind of taking over the role. But see, I don't agree with anything you said about Marcel Reed. I think Marcel Reed at Texas A&M, I think he's going to have a fantastic season. He was actually on my short list for possible Heisman candidates out of the SEC when I was looking over it. I also like Taylon Green out of Arkansas. I feel like Arkansas is getting
Taylon Green
getting ignored a lot when people are talking about the SEC. I was watching some preview shows just warming up for the week, and they were talking about Arkansas for literally 60 seconds and then moving on. Arkansas has the potential to really disrupt the SEC with their schedule and with their quarterback play. He can single-handedly win you a game with just his legs and his arms. So look out for Arkansas. Those are not going to be automatic W's on people's schedules. Someone has to be that team like last year's Vanderbilt who came out and upset Alabama. There's got to be a team like that this year in the SEC that's going to beat a couple teams that they shouldn't. And I think Arkansas is going to be the team that we need to watch out of the SEC this year. Not for making the playoff, but for causing the most disruption.
I think it's also interesting, too, that with your perspective, like your guys' kind of thought process, kind of going through this, is the actual quarterback themselves, which I 100% can understand. We're talking talent for talent. We're talking about who's going to make decisions. I mean, we're in the SEC. You're going to have to make tough throws. Defenses are live, like they're going to get after you and things like that. But, you bring up Alabama here and Ty Simpson struggling. Well, I look at it like they might have the best receiving core in the SEC. You got Ryan Williams on one side, and then you got Jeremy Bernard on the other side. who's going to be a first-round pick at the end of this upcoming season here. And I think with Ty Simpson, he's a kid that's a former 5-star. You said it, though. You didn't like his decision-making from what you saw in film. That's going to be the biggest thing. Kalen DeBoer's had an entire offseason. He needs to work on what's in between the ears and not necessarily work on what his talent is. He has all the talent in the world to get it done. And you don't have to be Superman when you have an offense like what Alabama has, especially at the wide receiver position there. So I think that'll be really interesting to see kind of how that goes into fruition there. But there's also one other team that we haven't talked about at all yet, and probably deservedly so. But there's also another former 5-star kid that is going to be starting quarterback at an SEC school, and that kid's name is Jackson Arnold, and he's going to be playing for Auburn University.
Terrible. Have you seen the reports coming out of camp? Oh my! The defense was told to go easy on him to help with his self-esteem, bro. He is playing like shit. He literally got tossed off the field today because he couldn't decide who to throw to. He got benched for the back. He got told to sit his butt down because it has poor performance in practice.
I'm seeing all the reports, and it definitely matters. But to Bill's point earlier, what can you do on the field? Like, there's a reason why. Like, honestly, I want you to look like this in practice. Like, I want you to figure it out in practice, because once the games are live, you're going to be like, oh, I made that mistake in practice. So I'm not going to make it again. Now, I'm not saying Auburn is going to be this great school. I'm not saying they are, a favorite, a dark horse, or anything like that. I'm just saying this Auburn team last year won, I think it was 6 games, and they had Peyton Thorne and who's who playing quarterback last year. And not to mention, they have one of the best kept secrets at the wide receiver position in Cam Coleman. Cam Coleman's a former 5-star kid that is an absolute monster. And because Ryan Williams had the year he did, a lot of people weren't talking about Cam Coleman in the same respect there, but he's a phenomenal receiver there as well. I'm just saying, I feel like that Auburn team, they have the potential to shock you in a game or two, because let's not forget, this is the same Auburn team that had no business beating Texas A&M last year, and they did, and that ultimately spoiled Texas A&M's chances of making the playoff there. So I'm just saying, talent is there. You don't become a former 5-star off of wishes and dreams. So
you do by getting your growth spurt early and going up against high school kids. The dude was absolute trash last year. In his 6 games he played against LSU, he was sacked over 25 times. His most passing yards in the game was 225 against South Carolina. But his next highest after that was 110 yards at LSU. Dude could not handle the pressure of the SEC defenses against him last year. And Oklahoma's offensive line may have struggled a little bit, but his playmaking ability was nowhere to be seen. He got benched. He transferred out of Oklahoma. They made the mistake going away from Dylan Gabriel, and now they got to eat crow for it. And now I forgot the Oklahoma coach Venables. If he does not turn this system team around this year at Oklahoma, he's going to be fired. So he put his money behind the wrong horse with Jackson Arnold, and I can't wait for him to be exposed further at Auburn. I cannot be more against a quarterback this season than I am Jackson Arnold. That dude is trash.
For everything that you're saying there, I want you to know that could very well come to fruition with Dante Moore in Oregon. I'm not saying that is hating. Boy. I'm just saying that
this dude, he's just throwing
random shots. I'm not. They're in the
same
2023. They were in the same 2023 class. They were put in positions to be starting quarterback for their respective programs. They did not succeed at said things. They lost their starting positions. They hit the portal. They didn't play, and now they got an opportunity to be a starting quarterback. I'm just saying it could very well be.
Huge difference. One, Dante Moore played his freshman year. Jackson Arnold sat behind Dylan Gabriel and learned for a year and picked up nothing. That's the difference. So you can pitch for Jackson Arnold all you want to, but Dylan's going to be the worst QB in the SEC. Plain and simple. I'm saying it now. Whew. Man, the second you brought his name up, I was hoping to go the whole show without bringing up Jackson Arnold because I didn't want to pop a blood vessel. But here we are. Cottrell just starting crap.
I'm just saying that 2023 classes, I hold them in high regard. They were one of the classes who was near and dear to my own heart here. And at this point, absolutely none of them have panned out. And to just give you guys a quick kind of refresher of who was in that class, Dante Moore, who I was extremely high on, and I still think he's going to have a great year at Oregon, even after what I just said, with him having the potential to be in the same boat as Jackson Arnold there. Jackson Arnold was obviously in that class there as well. Arch Manning was in that class. And then you had Malachi Nelson going to USC in that class too, who I always thought was the best quarterback in that class as far as talent goes. And now he's playing at UTEP. And we're going to see Arch and Malachi play in week 3 in a matchup that, if you would have told me in 2023, I would have said, hey, that's going to be must-see TV. But now it's just going to be on the TV while I'm taking my mid-afternoon nap on Saturday. So it's just where we are.
Or maybe it's just one of those really weird times where a whole class is just a bust. And that would be even more wild. It could. It's happened before.
But it better not because Dante Moore is leading my team, so they can't be all busts. All right, they can't be all.
Well, busts. To Cottrell's point, he didn't. I hate to say it, playing under Chip Kelly is a very quarterback-friendly situation. He got benched there, and Chip Kelly went to Ohio State and took Will Howard and won a national championship. So.
You're comparing apples to Ferraris, bro. You got a true freshman versus a fifth-year senior, 4-year starter.
Nobody's ever called Will Howard a Ferrari. I promise you that.
Compared to what Dante Moore was as a true freshman, that's
I promise you that.
You hear the respect that Will Howard's getting nowadays.
Even after the national championship, he's still trash. He's still trash. Now he's a Ferrari.
He's a Ferrari.
Kansas State quarterback. Not Avery Johnson for Heisman. No, look, that is not comparing the same thing, okay? An 18-year-old kid versus a 23-year-old kid, totally different maturity levels, better decision-making, game experience. You can't really compare those situations in a Chip Kelly offense. Just saying.
I'd argue rationalize it however you have to.
I'd argue
rationalize it.
I'd argue that Jackson Arnold playing in Brent Venables' system, who is a known DC, and not playing with an offensive-minded coach is one of those things where could be detrimental to player development there as well. But here we are.
Dylan Gabriel had no issues. He threw for over 400 yards in his
Dylan Gabriel was also a four-year quarterback that you're talking about Will Howard being. Let's not forget
that he didn't have a system that an offense could thrive in. Dylan Gabriel showed you that you absolutely can thrive in that offensive system.
Dylan Gabriel is not the same as that's comparing apples to a Ferrari. That's what you just told me.
The apple over the Ferrari like an idiot. So we took the Ferrari to Oregon and
turned him into a Honda Civic.
Been to Big Ten championship. Anyway. I know we're getting out. Well, I guess we got like 25 minutes left before I guess there's no kickoff today. But who do you guys have going to the SEC, playing each other and winning the SEC championship? That's the big question.
And so for me, I'm going. The more things change, the more they stay the same. I have the Georgia Bulldogs playing the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I like Georgia to come out victorious in said battle.
Judging off what I've said earlier, you probably would think that I'm not picking either one of these teams. But to Cottrell's point, there's just as much unknowns with everybody else. I love Florida. I love DJ. I just think that schedule's unrealistic for them. I think they're a year away. I'm never going to trust Brian Kelly. So I have Georgia versus Texas in the final. I actually think Georgia wins the SEC this year. and they go race car driving through Athens.
Jeez.
All right, Alex. Let me know how Oklahoma beats Texas in the SEC championship game.
No. That's not what's going to happen. It's not what's going to happen this year. I wish Oklahoma's schedule to end closes or that's 6 weeks. 5 ranked opponents in 6 weeks. That's a tough for anybody to get through.
Oklahoma's not going to beat Michigan, bro. I don't know why we keep talking about Oklahoma.
Well, that out of conference matchup won't matter for the SEC title. But I actually have a rematch of the last week of the season. I have a Texas A&M SEC championship. I think Marcel Reed takes a huge step forward. That's why I don't appreciate the Marcel Reed disrespect. Texas A&M's defense is going to step up big this year. Marcel Reed had 2,000 passing yards, over 500 rushing yards in part-time play last year. And I think with him being the guy from jump, I think he's going to excel. I think he's going to have over 3,500 passing yards. I think he's going to get close to John Mateer numbers as far as total touchdowns from last year, close to 40, along with almost 1,000 yards rushing. I think he's going to take over the offense, and I think it's going to be a Texas A&M SEC championship game. I do think that Texas A&M will lose to Texas in the SEC championship game, but I believe it's an all-Texas final, and we get a rematch 2 weeks in a row.
I'm not going to lie to you guys. We may have to, Justin, this is just for you. We may have to change the Ladd McConkey shots to John Mateer shots because I feel like the rest of the season, we're going to hear John Mateer's name every single week.
Every week.
They're going to be 5 and 6, and we're going to be talking about John Mateer getting Oklahoma to bowl eligibility the final week of the season. It's going to be.
No, I have Oklahoma 8-4 on the season, but just to say,
you ain't winning the Heisman at 8-4 as a quarterback.
I think you're wrong there.
Who do you have them losing to?
Let me pull up their schedule real quick because I was going through it earlier, and I actually have them beating Texas. I think that's one of the few losses Texas has.
I agree, for what it's worth.
Oklahoma soon. All right, so schedule-wise, they got Illinois State, and they play Michigan at home in Oklahoma. Michigan is actually Oklahoma is the favorite there in that game to start the season so far. And then they have Temple. They play Auburn, Kent State. Then they get Texas on October 11th. Then they have South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, LSU. And I think the games that they lose, I think are going to be on the road at South Carolina. I think they lose where was it? I think they lose to Alabama, and I think they lose to LSU. So that's 3 losses, actually 9-3.
There's a chance they might not win post October 11th.
Bro, he was going through it, and I was like, they're not making a bowl game.
No, like I said, Ole Miss is usually the team I'm backing. Austin Simmons, I love what Austin Simmons can bring to the table, but I think he's a year away from being really impactful under Lane Kiffin's system. So I think that they do beat Ole Miss. I think Tennessee, do we really know what Tennessee is going to be? I mean, with Nico, we have an idea. Yeah, but is that a step up? Do we feel like
it's not a step up? No.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like they're taking a step back there as well. So I think that they beat Tennessee in Tennessee. And then obviously Alabama, I said that with Ty Simpson, I don't know what that's going to look like. So that's a 50-50 game as well. I think Oklahoma has a chance, with steady quarterback play, if they could be Alabama could be switching things up at that time. And then you got LSU at home to close the season. I might just be like, screw it. Oklahoma, Texas, Red River rivalry, SEC championship. After looking at this, I'm actually getting more support for John Mateer for
That's
Heisman.
what I thought I literally said, tell me about how Oklahoma was going to face Texas in the SEC championship game.
I know, but I like Texas A&M's schedule though. You got at Notre Dame. That's where that loss won't affect your championship opportunities, but also it's a big enough win where Notre Dame will be ranked enough to really boost where they're at in the standings, or as far as the rankings go. And then I said Auburn, I think, is going to be terrible. You got Florida at home. Your only real road games are at Arkansas and at Texas, and you get South Carolina at home. So I really like Texas A&M's schedule really being beneficial to them. I also like the what?
Hear me out. could we live in a world where Texas doesn't make the college football playoff? And that sounds crazy on the surface, but Alex, I told you, I agree with you that I think Oklahoma wins the Red River rivalry this year.
Mm.
I do think Ohio State has enough defensively to get it done first week of the season. I look at 2 games towards the end of the season at Georgia. It's not going to be an easy game. And then the final game of the year against Texas A&M. Yes, it's a home game, but it is a rivalry game there. While, of course, I can see them winning that game. I can see them beating Georgia. I can see them beating Ohio State. I can, of course, see them beating Oklahoma. Like, I think there's a real possibility, and I didn't even mention at Florida. I think there's a real possibility we're looking at this team potentially being 8-4.
I don't think anybody gets in with 4 losses. So if that's where they end up, I would agree with you and say no. I don't think they're going to lose to Oklahoma, and I'm saying this because it's not even a shot at John Mateer. I think we haven't really talked about the other side of the ball that I don't think is going to be drastically better than they were last year. And that team, I think Oklahoma is going to give up a bunch of points again this year. I think they finally got a bunch of recruits in there, but they're younger. I think Oklahoma's a year away. I think Oklahoma next year with John Mateer and that defense with a bunch of sophomores and juniors instead of freshmen and sophomores, I think Oklahoma's a really good football team next year. I don't think they are
John
this
Mateer
year.
can't stay around that long, or else he'll have sanctions placed on him. He's got to get out this year. So
No, stop it.
And not to mention, their defense was 19th ranked in the nation last year. Like, their defense was not terrible. It was Jackson Arnold why they lost games.
Oh,
Jackson
God.
Arnold only played 5 games.
Yeah.
No, I just looked at his stats. He had 8 games under his belt last year.
He only started 5. They were starting the other kid. I remember they started playing the other kid against. It was early in the season.
But yeah, see, that defense was ranked 19th in the country last year. So I don't think that defense is. I think that defense is going to be. If it stays where it's at, that's what you want, because your offense is 100% taken that step forward. If the defense can stay the same, Oklahoma, baby. I hate Oklahoma, but John Mateer, I am now a fan of Oklahoma.
I'm very surprised that you are such a fan of his because he's not 30.
I also want to see what John Mateer looks like against somebody whose defense isn't 120th or worse too. So that's going to be real interesting as well. He's going to play big boy defenses this year. So I'm not saying he's not talented. He can't sling the rock, but at the same time, he's not playing the teams he played last year. Like he's going to play a bunch of really good defense this year with good secondary. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. I don't think he's a sure thing in that aspect either.
Well, hey, we got a couple more topics left, and that's Heisman, and then we look at the Eliminator Mountain. Who wants to start off their Heisman picks?
Well, I'm going to go with mine here because mine has not changed since we did this to start the year, to end the year last year. For me, my number one guy is Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. I think when you have the weapons that he's going to have with Aaron Anderson coming back this year, and just LSU we know is always a stable of receivers in that program. I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to be in a spot where he's going to throw for a ton of yards, and we know he has the arm talent to do so. I mean, he put up good numbers last year. I think he can learn from some of the bad turnovers that he took last year, and I think numbers-wise, he is very much going to be in the mix for the Heisman Trophy this upcoming year.
I got a question for you, because something that's been really bothering me is I'm reading this article, not right now, but I was reading an article about him re-aggravating a knee injury. Brian Kelly plays it off as, oh, it's nothing. It's just, a re-injury, nothing big. He'll be fine. I feel like it was a non-contact injury. He's re-aggravating, just planting the throw. Like, to me, I think it's more worrisome than just, yes, he's a huge part of that offense. 4,052 yards last year. I don't know. I think I'm worried about this knee. I think if it's a non-contact, he's hurting it. Oh, he's re-aggravating it and missing time. What's going to happen when he starts taking shots, low shots to the knee, just being rolled up on when the pocket starts to close? Like, I think that knee injury is something that I focus on a lot as an LSU fan. Not that I am an LSU fan, but if I was an LSU fan, does that worry you at all, or do you think that Brian Kelly is being honest when he's saying it's just a little re-aggravation?
I mean, for me, I think at the end of the day, at the quarterback position, you're going to get banged up. Whether you come into the season 100% healthy, you come into the season banged up, you're going to get hit. It's just one of those things, especially in the SEC. There's no way you're going to be unscathed going through there. So if Brian Kelly is just kind of blowing it off as this thing, it's really not that big of a deal. I truly don't think it would be that big of a deal, because if it was a bigger deal, you don't play him as much through practice. Like, you give him additional rest. You give it time to, whether it's like cartilage building back up or whatever the case may be going on. If there's inflammation there, you give it time to go back down. Whatever the case may be of what's going on with that knee, that time heals all with that. So, of course, if it's a continuous problem, then that's something they're going to have to look at there. But the fact that he's still practicing every day, gearing up, getting ready for week one,
he missed a week of practice because of it. He missed a week of practice about it.
But this is gearing up towards the season, though. Like, I think if you're really worried about it, you want him to not play.
Exactly.
Not play.
Exactly, and he hasn't been. So he
missed a week of practice isn't that. I'm talking about significant time missed leading up to the season.
I mean, how much more leading up to the season can you be besides 3 weeks before kickoff?
Missing 1 week of practice and then you're practicing again?
Or a non-contact knee injury, I think it's a huge deal.
But then you go back to practice. If you don't go back to practice, then I think it's a big deal. But then you go back to practice, I see no big deal.
All right, I'm gonna notate this later on the season. I
think
he's gonna rear his ugly head up.
I think with Brian Kelly's history, I think it at least justifies talking about it or thinking about it. I don't know if I was an LSU fan, I would be completely
trustworthy,
not worried about the situation. But I mean, worst case, he blows out his knee and Brian Kelly will just never talk to him again. But it's
you're not wrong. That's the worst part.
Listen, there's no love lost for that man for me, especially after that situation, but we won't get into it.
I'm sorry, but I got off on a tangent there. Who are you thinking about for Heisman?
I'm sticking with my man DJ. Because again, I think if he can get that team to 8-4, 9-3, that means he's probably playing out of his mind. I think they're on the fringe of getting a college football playoff berth at that point. And I think a lot of that's probably on the shoulders of how he's playing. And I think he's squarely in the thick of the conversation at that point.
For me, I have two guys that I really like in the SEC. Obviously, you've heard me preach about John Mateer, but I'm going to pretend like he gets some sort of repercussions on the season because obviously we don't know. So I'm not going to say John Mateer. I am going to say Taylon Green, though. Taylon Green threw for 3,100 yards last year, ran for another 602, 23 total touchdowns. They were 1-6 versus ranked opponents last year, with the one win being against number 4 Tennessee, and he kind of showed how his leadership and his playmaking ability won them that game. And I think that with another year under in the system, Arkansas is going to be underrated in every single game they go into this year. I think Taylon Green is going to really step up and have the biggest impact for the Arkansas Razorbacks, and I think Taylon Green would be someone I would keep an eye out for the Heisman.
Taylon Green is going to be a phenomenal player. There is not a shot in hell that he wins the Heisman or even gets in the mix for Heisman.
You're going to see, man.
Arkansas won't be good enough to get there.
We'll see.
I mean, 7-5, you won't get there. I think 7-5 will be a good season for Arkansas. I will say though, the one name that I wanted to throw in there as well though is, we talk about a lot of the new faces in the SEC. Well, there's one guy who was a starting quarterback last year as well, and his name is Lenore Sellers, and he is a dual threat guy, and he's going to have the ability to be in that Beamer offense yet again. And he saw a lot of growth as the year went on last year, And I think Lenoris is going to have the opportunity to really turn some heads there. And if South Carolina has a very successful season, I think Lenoris's numbers are going to be right there with a lot of the other top quarterbacks in the country.
I definitely think he's a dark horse. I don't disagree with you at all. I think South Carolina is probably I think they're a step above what Vanderbilt was last year. But I think they're definitely going to beat either a team or two, probably especially down the stretch. They're not supposed to. They're definitely the team that I think that could probably create havoc and mess up people's seasons up. So again, I'm excited because again, I think all the heavyweights will be there. I just don't think they're as dominant or there's going to be this huge gap like there usually is. I think this is the most wide open the SEC has been in a long time. I think it'll be good for football. It's going to be good for fans. And I think it's going to be really interesting coming down the stretch because I think all these teams, a bunch of them play each other, and I think a bunch of them are going to jockey for position, the last couple of weeks to get in at large to the playoffs. So I think it'll be a lot of fun.
I think. No, go ahead, Alex.
Oh, I was going to say that I think Lenoris Sellers, he can only go as far as his offensive line takes him. He was sacked 33 times last year. In fact, he had a 3-game stretch where he was sacked 15 times during SEC play. So I said, as long as the offensive line can improve their pass protection, even cut those sacks in half, Lenoris Sellers' stock is going to be through the roof. That's what I was going to say.
I was just going to say the one thing that will kind of piss me off this upcoming season is I think this is going to be the year where those SEC diehards are going to have a point, and I think it's going to be a fair point. Because I truly think that, we talked about Vanderbilt and we talked about Arkansas, as much as Alex wants to hate on Jackson Arnold, I think Auburn can be a team that beats some ranked opponents this upcoming year. I truly think this is one of those years where, outside of Kentucky and Mississippi State, those teams, it's going to be tough sledding in the SEC every single week. And you may, come across a game where Alabama's playing somebody that's not ranked and they ultimately lose, or LSU is playing somebody unranked and they ultimately lose. I think the SEC, to Bill's point, is really wide open this year. And I think those, lower tier teams, as far as talent goes, they might end up 8-4 or 7-5, but I truly think this is the year where they can really beat those, top dogs in the SEC.
Well, if it's wide open, I think honestly the ACC has so many teams that I think could take the crown there. Same with Big 12 that we talked about last week. SEC is no different. And I'm excited to talk about the Big 10. I think the Big 10, the field is a little more narrow in the Big 10, but as far as SEC, ACC, and Big 12 goes, this will be 3 phenomenal races throughout the season. So I'm excited to see it play out.
I think the ACC, believe it or not, out of the 3 of them, I think is the most
narrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think Clemson definitively is the best team on paper. If they go out and prove that and play that way, is another another whole discussion. But I think if they do go out and play well, I think they are hands down the best team in the ACC.
I agree.
Well, let's get to the Mountain. What do y'all think about that?
Let's go.
Do it.
And the SEC Mountain is complete. Cottrell, who are the teams that you picked to join the Mountain?
My teams are my SEC championship matchups in Georgia and Alabama. And then my third team is the Lenoris Sellers-led South Carolina Gamecocks.
Hey, I'm with it. Bill, how about you?
I went the same. I went with championship game in Texas and Georgia, and then again added in LSU. I think they, with Gus and having the no quantity there, I think they're a little bit ahead of other teams that are going to be breaking in new quarterbacks. But every team I see up there, I mean, I think you can make a case for, which again is going to make the SEC really fun this year.
Yeah, and I went with Oklahoma. Obviously, the offensive firepower I think that they bring to the table, along with the returning defense. I think Oklahoma and even their schedule, if they can get through a couple pieces of the gauntlet, I think that they have a nice opportunity with strength of schedule alone to get into the college football playoff. Texas A&M, obviously, I picked them to make the SEC championship. I think Reed has a fantastic year starting QB. And then I didn't really talk about DJ Lagway at all this episode, but I am really high on what he is capable of. And I think him leading the way, I think that gives Florida an opportunity as long as he's able to stay healthy, stay upright, and slide, not take big hits. I think that Florida is, the sky is the limit for that team. I said with his size and arm capabilities, I think Florida definitely is a team that we should be talking about, or at least invite to the Mountain. So that was my theory that I put up there. But the Mountain's getting crowded, y'all. The Mountain is getting crowded. We got the Big Ten arriving soon next week.
Next week we got Big Ten, and we actually get to preview a real football game. So it's going to be,
not looking forward to that one. I'm going to have to hear Avery Johnson's name as much as I heard John Mateer's name today.
Control, you know what we're going to do? Me and you are going to come up. We won't tell Alex what the number is, but me and you are going to come up with an over-under.
Over-under? Okay.
Of how many times he says it, and then see if he hits it next week. It could be interesting.
Okay.
Jeez. You know what? At least I'm passionate, and I have. You know what? I was passionate about SMU last year. It paid off. I'm passionate about Avery Johnson this year again.
You were passionate about Avery Johnson last year, and that did not pay off. So
it did not pay off.
Fair.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him for those shortcomings.
I'm sure you don't.
For as bad as he was at periods last year, and as good as some of the quarterbacks played in that conference, Avery Johnson's name was mentioned way too many times on this show last year. I'll leave it at that.
You know what? That's fine, Bill. You can leave it at that. But he's gonna make noise this year. Junior season. It's time for him to step up and lead that team. And I'm excited to see him play. If I could get Avery Johnson in a John Mateer game, give me Kansas State, Oklahoma in the college football playoff. Oh my God.
Ugh, yawn.
I'm gonna call in to work that day.
I think it'd be pretty interesting if after the first game we're like, oh, Avery Johnson hasn't learned a damn thing from last year. He's got like 2 turnovers, and I'm like, Alex, you better not start this shit up again. Like, this isn't. He's gonna be like, oh, it was the first game of the year. You had to get it out of the system, and I'm gonna be like, Alex, don't start with me. Like, we're not doing this again in year 2 of Avery Johnson. We're not doing it.
Hey, listen, to his own admission. Hey, maybe another Kansas State quarterback turns into a Ferrari, Control. You never know. Could be 2 in a row.
No, he's got to leave to do that. Avery Johnson's got to go somewhere.
Come to Oregon. Come to Oregon. We'll take you. We'll take you, Avery. But no, I think the Mountain's coming together. I'll move some of these teams over, make some room for some of the Big Ten teams, but pretty soon we're gonna be able to start hiking up this mountain, and I'm excited.
I'm gonna say this: there's gonna be some freaking fatalities on this mountain this year. Early, I do agree. I think there's gonna be a couple teams that don't get out of base camp, but I think there's also, come the end of the year, there's gonna be a bunch of teams that are gonna be like, and they're gonna get up around green boots and think they're gonna be safe, and one slip of the foot and down you go.
I will say I do see one omission here, and I think it's their own fault. But Notre Dame not being on here, I know we talked about the ACC already. We talked about them being that, and regardless of what you think of Notre Dame, I think with all of the other teams there in the ACC, Notre Dame deserves to at least be at base camp. Now, I don't know how far they actually hike up the mountain, but they deserve to at least be at base camp.
I agree. This is what we'll do. Since they should be in the Big Ten, we'll do Notre Dame. We'll preview Notre Dame next week with the
Big
Ten.
Previewed them.
We previewed them ACC week.
Kind of.
No, we did. We went over their whole schedule and everything.
Yeah, the whole thing. I made a slide and everything.
I know you forgot about it, but yeah, we did that
exactly.
Already.
That's how forgettable Notre Dame is.
He's got another year. He's got another year older. Alex, since that show, the memory starts to go as you get older.
Alex, you can't say shit because you forgot to put him on the mountain. So
I didn't put them on the mountain on purpose because no one nominated them. I only put the teams that we nominated on the mountain. No one said Notre Dame, therefore Notre Dame isn't on here. The only teams on this list are teams
thank
we
God,
put
thank
on
God,
this list.
thank God, Cottrell caught it.
Is it though? It's just going to be a waste of a copy and paste of a graphic just to have to make another one for the freaking tombstone.
They deserve a tombstone once they get it. I'm just saying they deserve to be a base camp.
That's fine. They literally broke everybody's heart last year losing to Ohio State.
They didn't break my heart.
I don't know whose heart they broke because if
nobody wanted Ohio State to win. Nobody.
If you didn't see that coming, you just weren't looking at the picture correctly.
Nobody wanted it to happen, Cottrell. Nobody wanted you to win the championship.
The Notre Dame Fighting Irish fans are a couple years removed away from being Cowboy fans. So,
but that's the mountain. Big Ten coming next week.
That is the mountain. Next week. Yeah. Next week he doesn't throw that pass. I don't think they win that game. But that being said, next week is the big one, the fun one for this show, obviously. Big Ten preview, week 0 preview. It's only going to be one game, but we are going to have live football to get off the air for. Do they kick at noon, or is it like a 9 o'clock kick? Because it's
I believe they kick at noon. No, because they kicked at noon the Florida State and
yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
I think it's gone up. Kansas State is now 3.5-point favorites, in case that matters to anybody.
It's because Alex dumped his 401k on Avery Johnson.
And the house. And the house, too.
Move the line.
They are at noon.
No, whoa. I got 9. Yeah, noon. I guess that is 9 a.m. my time is noon your guys' time. That's how time works.
Yeah, keep up. So that'll be good. Next week will be the first week we have to get off. We have to get off the air on time. So,
yes, I need to be in front of the TV.
Yep. Big Ten preview show, week 0. And we have live football. So that is it for this week. Gentlemen, anything else as we close?
I got
Jackson
nothing.
Arnold sucks.
Oh, man. The Avery.
John Jeff Heisman.
Can we get the Auburn Kansas State game? That's the game we need. Watch Jackson Arnold outplay Avery Johnson. Watch.
Oh my goodness.
Alex's head explode.
Pop like a balloon as soon as it happens.
Yep. All right, peace. Bye. Jump into your Heisman.
All right, gentlemen. We will see everybody next Saturday. We're going to sign off here, and like I said, live football next week. So I'm excited. Thanks as always for listening. Subscribe, like, do all that stuff. All that help us out, and we will see everybody next week.
All right, see you, boys.